Hello and welcome to Authentic Leadership in a Context of Crisis. This is a TOC symposium recording. This event was originally sponsored by Management Concepts. With us today presenting is Jim Robinson. Jim is the Executive Director for the Center for Excellence in Public Leadership. He's been a leader in the field of executive development and organization change for more than 30 years, serving in the senior leadership roles in both private industry and university settings. He is committed to serving as a catalyst for positive social change that provides robust opportunities for all people to thrive and contribute to just and sustainable communities at the highest levels of potential. Jim, I'll bring up your first slide and the floor is yours.
Well, Nell, thank you so much for affording me this opportunity to present again. And we've got the audio working. So I'm really excited about the opportunity to do this. I chose the topic of authentic leadership in a context of crisis for obvious reasons. We are all facing or living through the crisis caused by the worldwide epidemic, the virus, and it has caused severe disruptions in many lives. For those of us that are fortunate enough to still be working and be able to work from home, we've had to adjust how we're working. We've had to adjust how we're connecting with our teammates, with our staffs, how we connect with our clients and customers, those we serve, with our stakeholders. And for many of us, many of you at the same time that you've been doing this, you've had to manage children. You've had children at home who are having to be homeschooled because their schools have been closed, and you're having to balance and juggle being a homeschool educator, parent, with being a functioning professional. And also you've had to juggle with your staffs who are also experiencing these kinds of crises. So let's go to the next slide now. So the question that I put to you and I put to myself and I will try to address is, how can leaders provide assurance and confidence to move forward and through crises without providing false promises or blaming and shaming others, which may only provide temporary security or temporary answers or temporary relief? And I'll come back to this and we'll talk about how blaming and shaming the others enables how people respond, and sometimes sort of what they fall back into during a period of crisis. I think we've all seen on our national stage that there have been many partisan attempts and many examples of blaming each other, blaming scientists, blaming non-scientists, blaming China, blaming other countries, blaming those who don't wear masks, blaming those who do wear masks, shaming those, etc. So we've seen that play out on a national stage, and sometimes it becomes a factor in our own offices, in our own organizations, in our own agencies. So this is the challenge, the question that I put to you. And let's go on to the next slide. Now let's go to, great. So while we're dealing with this COVID crisis, we're all having to summon up our deepest resources for resilience. This is also in the context of a larger existential threats. So beneath the surface, there are some anxiety-producing existential threats which trigger our deepest fears, because we know that these are threats that any one of these threats can undo life as we know it. So number one, of course, is climate change. And this threatens the sustainability of our life support systems on Earth. And many of us have noticed changes in climate already. And we've seen the effects of this. We've noticed the forest fires raging in California and in the West. We've noticed the flooding. We've noticed that the hurricanes are more extreme, that the temperatures are rising each year. We've noticed that there's more flooding in the middle of the country from torrential rains. So we already see this, and we see its impact even in terms of immigration, as we see people from Honduras, from other Central American countries, from Mexico, who are migrating here. Some of them are migrating because of changes in climate, due to drought, due to torrential rains. When it does rain, they are unable to farm, they're unable to raise crops. And without the ability to do that, because they are subsistence farmers, they have to leave the land and they have to seek life elsewhere. So we're already seeing this. We're seeing this in other countries around the world, with other migrations are happening. The Department of Defense has said that climate change is the greatest threat to stability and the greatest potential cause of wars that exist. So it's something that they're taking very seriously. The other thing I would say is a sense of otherness, and we see this in our country. Racism obviously has been with us. It was one of our founding sins, as was the attempt to do genocidal warfare on Native Americans. These are our basic kind of core sins, a sense of otherness, ethnic divisions, religious otherness, nationalism, nationalistic. These are all divides. The danger of this otherness is that it really is something that we do because it is not easy and it is not natural for humans to kill each other. It is not natural for us to exploit others and degrade their existence the way that we have. And so we resort to demeaning others and making them less than human. And this is something that we're all going to become targets of, that we have to really reach down and catch ourselves when we find ourselves doing this, so that our sense of otherness does not make other people less than human, because we do not good things to people that we view who are less than human. Another thing that is a crisis that we're all experiencing is expanding populations of poverty, expanding populations of extreme poverty, and very insecure and shrinking middle class, versus extreme concentrations of wealth and power. And we see that the level of insecurity in our country has risen dramatically. People feel the level of desperation, the level of despair has gone up dramatically. And two of the leading indicators of despair for the future are suicide and drug use. And both of those are going up dramatically in communities that we have not recognized. They've always had these problems, but it's increasing. Our suicide rate among veterans is incredible, is alarming. So these are all leading indicators where people feel like their future, they're not looking forward to a future. They feel it's bleak. They feel that their opportunities and chances for living the life they aspire to are diminishing, and that their hopes for their children are diminishing. So this is a crisis. And when people feel insecure for basic necessities, they react in very reactive ways. And again, this leads to existential insecurities regarding basic necessities of life, such as food and clean water, protection from violence, and protection from predation. The number of people buying guns for self-protection has increased dramatically. And even we've seen the number of African Americans and other people of color purchasing guns for self-defense has gone up dramatically as they perceive that the White House has given the go-ahead for white nationalists to attack the others that they define as others. And this all leads to a breakdown of trust and respect for societal institutions. We see a breakdown of trust and respect for scientists, a breakdown of trust and respect for politicians, trust and respect for our courts, for our police departments, for the medical profession. And so these breakdowns of trust and respect break the social bonds. And so therefore we don't know what voices to believe, and we are skeptical about the stories that we are being told. So this is the backdrop of kind of low-level anxieties that flare up when they are provoked, when combined with an epidemic. Let's go on to the next slide, Mel. So I want to talk about, when I talk about these existential threats and talk about the various anxieties that people are feeling, I just want to give you a definition, and then we'll talk about why this is important. So fear is an emotion induced by perceived danger or threat, which causes physiological changes and ultimately behavioral changes. This is both fear and anxiety. And the behavioral changes are fleeing, hiding, or freezing. Those are some of the behavioral changes. And then, of course, fighting is another response to that. And it's either in the present or it can be an anticipation of future threats. So that some of the anxiety that people are experiencing is that they feel like their futures are bleak, and they see that their income is shrinking, that their opportunities are shrinking. So there's a fear, there's anxiety, worrying, apprehension, and then there are somatic symptoms, headaches, emotional turmoil. There are stomach, people are feeling it in their gut, ulcers, chronic fatigue syndrome. All of these kinds of things are symptoms of chronic fear and anxiety. Part of the danger of fear, because it's such a strong emotion, and that emotion is energy in motion. And when you put energy in motion, it is creative. It brings about that toward which we direct it. So fear is generative. And I can't think of a better way of saying it than a quote from Job, from the Bible: "For the thing which I greatly feared is come upon me, and that which I was afraid of has come upon me." And so it sometimes creates a self-fulfilling prophecy, because we we focus on what we fear, and then we unintentionally create the very conditions that bring the effects of those fears upon us. Now, let's go to the next slide, Mel. So we've talked about some of the consequences, and I'll just repeat them here. A narrowing of perception. So the way that the brain works, and this is a survival instinct, and this has served us well throughout our evolution and history. When there is a target of fear, we narrow and restrict our perception to focus on that fear. And we organize and mobilize our energy and our resources to escape that object of fear or to attack that which is coming at us. So you frequently use the example of if a saber-toothed tiger is on your trail and it begins to chase you, you want to be very focused on that tiger. You want to be very focused on running and escaping. That is not the time to expand your perception and look at, oh, what a beautiful forest I'm in. Look at the beautiful plants. Look at the flowers. Look at the variety of animal species. No, that's not what you want to do. You want to haul butt. You want to move quickly and be very focused. So that is very functional. And the brain sends and you receive a signal, perceptual signal goes to the brain, and it just eliminates all other perception, gets you very focused. However, in some of the chronic fear and anxiety situations that we encounter, this is dysfunctional because we narrow our perception and we restrict choices. So therefore we miss opportunities. So when we're working with our staffs, we can be so focused on what our targets are, what our fear targets are, what our sources of anxiety are. And we may be experiencing, we have to reduce budgets, we have to reduce staff, we have to serve in a different way, we have to serve different constituencies. Some of the functions that our agency did before are no longer needed since we're not meeting in person. But what happens is that when we narrow our perception, we miss other opportunities, other ways of responding. And so it becomes dysfunctional because we cannot expand our perception. Now, along with this, what often happens is that there's an increased sense of passivity and decreasing self-agency. And what we mean by passivity is that the future is something that's going to happen to us. It is not something that we can play a hand in creating. And so self-agency is your belief and is your taking action and your ability to bring about results that are important to you, to create the kinds of future that are important to you, that you can mobilize your energy, you can mobilize your focus, and you can be an agent in your life. You can be a creative agent and therefore express and have self-agency. When that decreases, we feel more at the whim of events. We have less energy, we are less mobilized, and we are less able to mobilize and focus on the future, on what we want to create, because we're so busy reacting to the past. This also leads to a short circuit in our thinking, and we often resort to habituated responses. And we'll talk about that. The reason that happens is that when we're in fear, the fear response goes to our cortex, and it is very rapid. And it is more rapid than our higher order thinking functions. So we don't have time to think, we don't think, and we react out of habit. And so we go from a stimulus into an habituated reaction. And we don't have the time or make the time to pause to think about what's going on, what our alternative actions might be. And oftentimes those habituated reactions are ones that no longer work, that in a changed circumstance, they don't work. But we're so focused, we're not seeing how they don't work, and we sometimes double down on strategies, on actions which don't work. And we feel like, well, if we just do more of these things, do them more intensely, do them in a bigger scale, we'll get different results. When in fact, we are in fact digging ourselves into a deeper hole. And so we want to talk about how do we take the shovel out of our hands so that we can stop the digging. Another thing that happens is when we fear anxiety and fear is that we look for others to blame. So we scapegoat others. Well, it's their fault. At the university, we've gone through some of this where faculty will scapegoat the administration. or scapegoat the board of directors of our university. The administration will scapegoat faculty as being recalcitrant, as not being team players. So that all that blaming, the shaming, attacking each other is something that we experience and that you may be experiencing. And we know that this can become very self-defeating. This creates enemies. It makes scarce resources more scarce because we're all fighting over scarce resources. So it can lead to very dysfunctional behavior. And in the end, we begin to self-sabotage. We do things out of habit, out of fear, that are not in our best interest, that sabotage the very goals that we want to take, that undermine our strategies, that undermine our efforts, that turn away people who might be helpful to us, that squander resources on old solutions that no longer apply. So these are all consequences that we see, some of these or all of these. And what I'd like you to think about here is to think about what's showing up, if anything, what kinds of symptoms are showing up, what kinds of behaviors are showing up in your agency and for the teams that you work with. Are you seeing any of these things? And how are you reacting? Do you see any of this in yourself? And how are you reacting to those things? So pause a minute, think about these things, think about how you are reacting to some of these consequences and behavioral consequences. So Mel, let's go to the next slide. And I want to begin to set the stage for, I know all of you are dealing with this, you're responding to it. And I want to begin to set the stage for why I chose the term authentic leadership. And authenticity during these times of crisis has been my experience, is very, very important. And we'll explain why, and we'll get your sense of this. But authenticity is the degree to which one is true to one's own character, spirit, or personality. And the last part is very critical, despite external pressures. It's pretty easy for us to be authentic, or it's easier to be authentic than our true selves. So being able to be consistent, to stand in there, to be consistent with your own character, with your own values, is extremely important in leadership, because people are looking to you. They're looking to your behaviors. They're looking to see what you do when these pressures that they are all feeling, and you're feeling very acutely. Now, another thing that authentic leaders do is it's very clear that they're serving an emerging and deeply felt sense of purpose. And they act in a manner consistent with purposeful vision. People have a sense of what you stand for. They have a sense of what your mission is. And that's on two levels. That's a sense of your own mission, the sense of the agency's mission, but a sense of a deeper mission that you may have, a sense of your purpose, a sense of your enduring values, and kind of a purposeful vision for the work that you do and for the work that your agency is doing. And are you consistent with serving that? Or are you abandoning your sense of purpose? Are you abandoning the vision? And are you in just a survival mode that really is a mode of self-destruction, of spiraling into a negative death spiral for you and your team and your agency? So that's authenticity. We're gonna follow up with this as well. Let's go on to the next slide, Mel. So a big part of authenticity, when we ask leaders about authentic leaders they've had, part of our survival mechanisms, and that our parents teach us and that we learn, and we learn this from the School of Hard Knocks, is how to spot a phony. Sometimes people are very good at fooling us and tricking us. But for the most part, over time, we're able to spot a phony. And that there's a sense of a lack of integrity. There's a lack of being whole and undivided, a quality of being honest and having strong moral principles. So it's not just how you do things, it's what you do in accordance with these moral principles of action. And people see that, and they are influenced by your state of integrity, by your sense of wholeness. Do you embody your values and principles of living and truths? And then they see, do you take a stand for what matters? Do you take a stand for those values? Do you take a stand for the important parts of your agency's mission that you think are really important or serving other people? Do you take a stand for that? Do you find creative ways to continue doing that? The reason that authenticity and integrity are so important is because they engender trust. They are, in fact, the glue that creates trust. In times of uncertainty, people need to feel that they can trust you. They need to feel they can trust your intentions. They may understand that you're confused, that you're anxious, that you're trying to find your way through, but they feel that they can trust your intention, that they can trust you to act in accordance with your principles and values, and that you're willing to take a stand for those things that you espouse, so you're consistent. And that trust is the social glue which enables us to navigate our way through these crises together. So that is an important glue factor. Now, is it the totality of what you need to do? No. But without trust, without that social glue, then what we are doing is very tenuous. It's difficult for us to hold together. As they say, the center does not hold. So authenticity and integrity are really important for trust. So what I want you to think about at this time is think about those leaders that you've had that were trustworthy, and think about those who proved to be untrustworthy. Think about your reactions. Think about the reactions of people around you, and think about the way that you were able to move forward with them. With those people that were trustworthy, think about how you saw them being trustworthy, and think about those people that were not and your reactions. And so the key word here is trustworthy. If we want to have other people trust us, we have to be trustworthy. And these states of being, states of integrity, are some of the ways that we engender and we become trustworthy. Now, the other thing I'd like you to think about is that when we talked about authenticity, it is being able to be authentic and have integrity when challenged in tough times. And there are times when all of you have been challenged to act in ways that are not integrous, in ways that are not authentic, ways that do not align with your values, with the principles, even with the mission of your agency, with the best interest of your stakeholders and the customers and clients you serve. How did you navigate your way through that? How were you able to maintain your sense of integrity, maintain your authenticity, and navigate your way through those situations where you may have been asked to do some things that were not integrous, where you were asked to be inauthentic, and yet you found a way to maintain your authenticity and your integrity and to be the kind of leader to your team that they expected you to be, that they really wanted to be, and that maintained their sense of trustworthiness. So think about your strategies and how you did that, and think about where you got the strength from, what you called upon as your source of strength to do that. Was it some principle, something somebody taught you? Was it an And where did you feel your anxiety? Did you feel it in your gut? Was it a sense of your stomach flipped a bit? Were you having headaches, difficulty sleeping, just feeling tense? Where did you feel that conflict with your sense of authority and integrity? And that's very important, being in touch with your body. All right, let's move on to the next slide. So I'd like you to think about those things. And I'd like you to think about your own, as we follow on, what were your practices when you came out of those dilemmas? What have you done to engender trust among your staffs and your teams? What is that you found to be effective in providing authentic leadership in this time of crisis, in helping your people to be more resilient, to help them be more creative in this time of crisis? And so I want to share with you some practices for authentic leadership, and then some of them I'll go into in more detail. Manage yourself consciously and practice mindful leadership. And later on, we'll talk about self-leadership in another slide or two, and what it takes to have self-leadership. But for now, how do you break yourself out of those habituated responses which are self-defeating, which no longer serve you or serve your purpose, and which are reactions in fear? And so part of being mindful, which is what is required in order to manage yourself consciously, is I'd like you to be in touch, more and more in touch with your somatics, with what's going on in your body. Your body will be the leading indicator that will tell you that you need to stop and pause, and then regain some control. We'll come back to this more. Again, build trust by leading with integrity and courage. Stand up for what you believe in. And again, this word courage is really critical. It takes courage to be an authentic leader. It takes courage to be a leader in these times of crises. Sometimes it takes the courage to do self-disclosure, to share with your team, hey, you know what? I'm anxious at this point. I don't know exactly what we should do. However, I'm confident that if we think about it, if we work together, we can find our way through this. And so it takes courage to share, takes courage to stand up for what you believe in is right. Be accountable yourself. By being accountable, we want to hold others accountable, but we need to be accountable. We need to model accountability. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to have challenges. Acknowledge that. Be accountable for the mistakes you make and correct it. That enables you to have others and hold others accountable. They see you being accountable. Ask for their feedback. Ask for input to help you be a better leader. Now, the reason to be accountable, and I will bring this up later, is what I call the law of the circle. The law of the circle is something that operates whether we are aware of it or not, in my opinion. And I'll give another example by analogy. If you go up on the top or the roof of a 5-story building and you are unaware of the law of gravity, if you jump off the roof of that building, gravity does not care whether you are aware of it or not. Gravity is going to bring you to the ground very, very fast with a bad result. So you may not be conscious of the law of gravity, but that doesn't mean it does not work. And it's not universal here on Earth. The law of the circle is similar. What it says is that which you give out, that's what you send out, comes back to you. And sometimes multiplied. The good that you give, the support that you give to others, the way that you affirm others, the way that you lead in a positive way, the way that you empower others, that comes back to you. oftentimes multiplied. If you are inauthentic, if you take advantage of others, exploit others, it will come back to you. So things circle back. Our behaviors, we're not punished for our actions. We're sometimes punished by our actions. We're not rewarded for our actions. We're rewarded by our actions due to the law of the circle. 4, be a creator, not just a reactor. There's a chance that even in our crises, we lose sight of the vision. We lose sight of our purpose. We lose sight of our mission. And we're just reacting. And we're kind of caught going down a waterfall. We're caught in a rushing current, and we're just being buffeted all about. Be a creator. And I will show you a slide that gives you a methodology for practicing being a creator. It's a different mindset than just reacting. Next, if you're being a creator, involve others. Co-create with your team and with others. This increases their sense of agency themselves, and it expands the playing field. It enables them to get in the game. You get better ideas. You engender more energy, and the follow-through is better because people tend to be more committed to those plans and actions that they themselves help to shape. So co-create with others. The process that I will show you later is something that you can do definitely with your teams and helps to hold you together. Diversify and include the others. Number 6. And the reason that diversity is important is because in a crisis, we tend to narrow our perception and we miss a lot. We miss a lot of signals. We miss a lot of possibilities. We miss a lot of options. When we diversify, when we include the others, whoever they may be, other kinds of people, other perspectives, other skill sets, other voices, other stakeholders, whatever, it helps us to diversify our pool of ideas. And in that diversity comes unique combinations that we would not have had before. And out of those unique combinations often comes creative response. So diversity is a survival necessity, and we'll talk about that later more. Develop an expanded ecosystem awareness and stakeholder inclusion. We tend to, in crises, again, become myopic. We tend to narrow our focus. And so we cannot expand our focus, and we don't see the broader ecosystem, and we lose touch with key stakeholders. We lose opportunities. Our perspective becomes narrowed, and it contributes to dysfunction. So think about your range of stakeholders. Think about your ecosystem and involve your team in becoming more aware of your ecosystem, more aware of your stakeholders, more aware of the range of people and other institutions that you need to include in your thinking. And then I ask you to challenge basic limiting assumptions. And I'm going to go over 3 of those basic limiting assumptions that I think we all need to challenge, that I think really box us in and get us fighting each other. So think about what you do. Think about if any of these things make sense for you, if these are any of these things that you're doing right now. There may be other practices that you are doing that you're finding effective. Some people have said that they are doing a lot more communication, that they have, and then more importantly, they're not just sending messages, but they're having listening meetings. They're listening to people. They're having Zoom meetings where they're just getting input from people. They're doing check-ins. How are you feeling? What's going on? What can we do to support you? These are some of the ways that they are extending themselves to their teams and to others, in addition to sharing information that provides broader perspective. So what are you doing? What are your practices? what are your practices, and are any of these 8 practices things that you might want to consider? All right, Mel, let's go. We'll go into these practices a little bit more. So we talked about mindfulness, the ability to lead yourself. So self-leadership, I believe, is one of the most difficult things for us to achieve, because I think that probably for each of us, leading ourselves, we're probably one of the most difficult people we have to manage, right, is managing ourselves. So self-leadership is the ability, through increased self-awareness and mindfulness, to manage your emotions, your thoughts, your self-talk, your energy, and your behaviors, to direct them to create outcomes that matter. It's the awareness and self-discipline to create a pause between stimulus and response, and to use that pause period to choose with intention one's actions rather than reacting automatically or habitually. To give you an example, many of us may have sent emails in anger and in reaction to something that somebody said to us or sent to us, only to regret it later. And so we find that our emotion, our anger, led us to a response, kind of habituated, unthinking response that did not lead us toward creating outcomes that matter. So what I'm challenging you to do, I think is very, very important, is find a way to be more in touch with your somatic, with your body. For some of you, it may be breathing exercises, it may be meditation, it may be physical movement or postures. The reason you want to be in touch is because your body will tell you that something powerful is happening in you. And if you listen to your body, it will make you stop and you will say, what is going on? Before you respond, you'll see a stimulus, your body will respond. If you can be in touch with your body, you can then slow down and ask yourself, what is going on? I'm angry. My blood is boiling. My muscles are tense. I really want to lash out in anger and fight this person. That's what's going on. But now I have the opportunity to slow down and say, what is my self-talk? Well, what I'm saying to myself, because what happens is, in between the stimulus and the response, very often there's a story that we are telling ourselves about that stimulus. The story is one that we're unaware of. It's a habitual story. That person made this comment and they are disrespecting me. And I got to defend myself. I got to put them down and put them in their places. And that leads to an energy of anger, and it leads to a behavior of retribution and reaction. But if we're aware of that, this is the story I tend to tell myself. We can stop and say, and involve our higher level thinking parts of our brain, and say to ourselves, really, how do I choose to respond in this moment? What is my intention? What is the outcome that I want to create? And then we can be much more mindful and intentional in our response. So we can choose with intention rather than reacting automatically or habitually. So I would say to yourself, get yourself a practice of mindfulness. And many of you already do this. Increase your discipline of this practice. I, for example, one of my mindfulness practices is breathing. And I have some breaths that I do. So I imagine myself, my higher self. For some of you, that could be God, that could be your I am presence, whatever you call it. I imagine the higher self of which I'm a part. And I imagine it all around me and all above me. And I imagine it sending me love, sending me positive energy, sending me joy. And so I breathe in, and you can time your breathing. I breathe in to a count of, say, 6 seconds. And I'm taking in those vibrations, those energies from my higher self. If they are infusing all of me, all of my earthly bodies, my physical, etheric, mental, emotional body energies are being infused with this unconditional love, with this sense of support, this sense of positive energy. And then as I breathe out for perhaps 10 seconds. I am expanding those energies from my higher self throughout my entire body. I'm expanding those and deepening the impact of those energies. And I may do that for 10 cycles. You can do it as you choose. Some people do an in-breath for 3 seconds and out-breath for 5 seconds, or whatever works for you. But imagine taking that in, and you will find that you'll be energized, uplifted. Your vibrational level will increase more rapidly. And that's something that you can always take a breath whenever you feel something going on in your body. So those practices, I think, are really critical to being an impactful leader in crises. All right, Mel, let's go to the next slide. The other thing I talked about is co-creating with others and being a creator rather than a reactor. And so if you could see me right now, there's some things I want to share with you, this chart and this picture. And you'll notice at the top is vision, or it could be goals, or it could be results that matter to you. But it's something that you want to create, that you want to bring into being, or that you and your team want to create or bring into being. And then opposed to that is current reality. Current reality is where you stand right now in relationship to your vision. So for example, I may have a vision or a goal of wanting to weigh a certain weight, and I may observe that my current reality is I weigh 20 pounds more than that. Now, when I observe both of those things, I hold my vision and I observe where I am in relationship to it, it creates a tension because there's a discrepancy between that which I desire to create and where I am in my life right now. And that is a good thing. That creative tension is an energy. So if you can imagine me having a rubber band in my hand, and imagine that I'm holding the rubber band in such a way that my top hand is the vision, my bottom hand is current reality. And imagine me stretching this rubber band. And as I stretch the rubber band, it creates a tension. What is potential energy now is more available to me. It is now more kinetic. It is now ready to be realized. Therefore, I've made more energy available to me. So what I do is keep affirming your vision, affirm whatever current reality is, and say, my goal is to be X, to weigh X, to create this for our clients. Currently, we have, instead of 100 clients, we only have 50. Our goal is to have 100 clients. So you say our goal is to have 100 clients. Current reality is we have 50. That's creating that tension. Now you're going to direct the energy to your goal. We choose to have 100 clients. And what's important in this is that where you direct your energy is what you create in your life. And so it's important to hold on to that vision, to be honest with yourself about where you are, and then choose to move in that direction. Now, what happens is that the focus on what you want is very different from focusing on what you don't want or want to get rid of. When you focus on what you don't want or want to get rid of, you in fact are energizing it. You want to focus on what is it that we want to create. And then use that tension to move forward. So 5 steps here. Cast a vision. Bring that vision into focus with your team, with yourself. What are our goals? What is it we want to create? Plant the seeds of visionary aspiration. How would we know it if we see it? If we have 50 customers, 100 customers rather than 50, how would we know that? Well, we would have X number of sales. We would have X number of engagements. We would have X number of people attending our events. Our network would be like this or whatever. So those are the seeds. Here's how we would see it. What can we do right now to walk in that direction? We don't have to know how to do it. We don't have to know how to do this completely. But is there an apparent first step that we can take to move us in that direction? And what you find, if you will take that step, each step sharpens your perspective, sharpens your energy, and gives you a clear vision, a large vision of how to get to your goal. Also, realize that we never go to the moon directly. We course correct our way to the moon. So you're going to make some missteps. You're going to observe, well, where am I now? You're going to course correct, but always keeping your vision in mind. Always observe current reality and notice discrepancy and choose for your vision. Live in the creative tension. Learn to live in that creative tension. Too often, we settle for a strategy that is really about reducing tension. And so the way, if you think about the rubber band again, the way that you can reduce tension is you can let go of your vision, or you can let go of your hold on current reality. And we see this all the time. We see tremendous compromises in purpose and mission and vision, or we see that in agencies and our teams, we don't measure our results. We don't measure our impact. And so we don't really know how we're doing or where we stand in relationship to our intended purpose or vision. So this practice can make you much more of a creator and bring into play more creative resources, more synergies, things that will what I find in doing this is that resources that are there available to you all along, you will begin to see those resources differently. You'll see a different way of using them, a different purpose. So what you have already will be viewed in a different light, and you will attract additional resources and opportunities to yourself. All right. Thank you, Mel. Let's move on. Now, these are some limiting beliefs that I feel we've all come to accept, and I think they really limit our options, and they really are dysfunctional, lead us to dysfunctional behaviors. The first limiting belief is scarcity, and I know we're all experiencing that now. There's a scarcity of equipment. There's a scarcity of ventilators. We don't have a virus, a shot that we can take. But I would say that scarcity is contrived. It's really a result of a lack of our imagination, a lack of our perspective. So some of the examples I'll give is that there are people who are hungry, people who don't have food, and yet we know that we have more than enough food to feed everybody on the planet. There are people that don't have clean water, and yet we have ways of getting them clean water, of having clean water. We have energy, people without sources of energy, yet we know that there is an abundance of energy if we shift our focus and if we allow to come on board some of the exciting innovations that we have. So the abundance regenerative belief is plenitude, is enoughness, that we're grateful that we have enough, that we have more than enough, and that there is plenty. Now, what happens is if you are grateful and if you will take stock of what you have, if you help your team to take stock of what you have, not what you don't have, but what do we have, you will find that you will begin to discover new uses for it. That the attitude of abundance and gratitude will show you resources and will attract to you resources and an abundance for you, enable you to do that which you want to do. Separation. This is a belief which is that we exist within ourselves for ourselves. Perhaps we expand that to our family, our tribe, versus the others. And this comes from scarcity, as opposed to that we're oneness with all people, with in fact all life, the planet, and the universe. And if we would treat the planet and other people as one with us, because I believe that they are, and in fact, one of my favorite quotes is from the movie The Color Purple, where the character Miss Seeley says to Mr., who has been abusing her for years and years, everything you've done to me already been done to you. And I think that's the principle of oneness, is that it's not do unto others as we would have them do unto us. Do unto others because when we do unto others, we're doing it to ourselves because they are us. We know that disrespecting the earth, our elemental resources, is disrespecting ourselves, and that we are in fact made up of earth minerals. We're made up of star material. That's what's in our body. So that oneness leads us to more respect, more gratitude, and a sense of stewardship. Stewardship in a bigger sense for what we have and for the well-being of others as well. Now, the third limiting belief is exploitation, and that follows from scarcity and separation. If there's not enough, if there's only us and it's you and me versus the world, why, we better get ours from the others and keep others away from ours. So get yours from the others and keep yours away from the others. This leads to exploitation. In order for us to exploit others and take from them, we begin to see them not only as the other, but as less than us. This versus a regenerative belief in cooperation and mutuality, a regenerative existence, inclusive purpose. And a big part of this is the misunderstanding, the misuse, the misappropriation of Darwin and Darwin's research. We hear about the survival of the fittest, which is something that Darwin recanted. And what we have found through research is not the survival of the fittest, but that the fittest are those entities, those organisms, which are most able to cooperate and collaborate with others. We find this in plant species. We find that in the root systems and rhizomes of plants, that even plants of different kinds have systems by which they share minerals with each other. What I as a plant need less of but have more of, I share with a different kind of plant, and that plant in turn shares with me. So we find that those organisms that can most cooperate, collaborate with the environment and with others, those are the ones that have evolved and that have survived. So we have a choice, I believe, of competitive scarcity versus cooperative abundance. All right, enough on that. Let's go to the next slide. Thanks, Mel. So this is another just kind of a pictorial of we are one with it all. And what I want to point out is the very center, the smallest circle, is in fact the universe within us, is in fact we're made up of star seed material, of earth material, So we have that very universe is within us. It is what we're made up of. It's not something we are apart from. And then the next circle is our self as a physical body. And this is what we experience when we look in the mirror and see. This is what we identify with as ourselves, that physical body. However, what we know is that we're even bigger than that we ourselves are a unique energy field that blends in with the energy field of Earth and the universe. And we know that we're energy fields because you all have had the experience of seeing somebody come into a room and you can read their energy. You know they're upset, not just by their behaviors, but sometimes you can just read the energy, that something's wrong, that they're depressed, that they're sad. You can read that energy. And sometimes there are people whose energy is attractive to us, and there are people whose energy we want to avoid. Was the statement, when you see anger and hatred walking down the street, just cross the street. Choose a different path versus that. And then there's the universe as an energy field. And all of this is one. And we interact and we send forth our energy into the energy field. We take in energy, but there's an exchange of energy and influence. And this is the reason behind the law of the circle. That in fact our energy is circular. That which we are giving out is coming back to us in amplified form. If we are aware of that which we are giving out and that which we are receiving, rather than being victims, we can ask ourselves, what might I have given that is coming back to me for me as a life lesson, something that I can learn from. All right, Mel, let's go to the next slide. And we talked about diversity, and that diversity enables a shift in point of view, enables a shift in consciousness, enables new insight. So this is kind of a process. First of all, if we will enable ourselves to consider and see from another person's point of view, doesn't mean we have to accept that point of view. Doesn't mean we view it as truthful. But if we can see what is their point of view, what is the other person's intention, what is it their concern, that leads to a birth of compassion. We begin to have some human compassion for that person. For example, so if I, as an African American, if I can begin to see from an aggrieved white male's perspective, what is it that about which they are aggrieved? What is their disappointment? What is it that they are despairing for the future? What is the basis for their anger, for their point of view? I can begin to have compassion. And in that compassion, I will have increased understanding of that person's point of view. And that will enable me to have dialogue. And some of my few rich dialogues that I've had with Trump supporters, when I've enabled myself to do that, and when we've been able to have that dialogue, have been very enlightening for me. I feel that I've come away with understanding some of our mutuality. And there's some ways that begin to emerge out of no way. See some ways that we might collaborate, that we might perceive each other that we did not see before. And when there are ways out of no way that begin to emerge, we're more able to see from other people's points of view. So by bringing in and engaging with diversity, having an attitude of inclusiveness, we in fact enable ourselves to have a shift in consciousness, which enables us to have a new insight. So this is why engaging with diversity can be so important for your resilience and for your leadership to create a way through in these crises. All right, Mel, let's go to the next one. So This is a broader perspective I want to share with you that about complexity and what is going on with us, and more about diversity and what's going on. I believe that we are being challenged to evolve, and so much is happening that is telling us that we're one world, that we're one people, that we're one with our environment. So we have a pandemic that begins in China, we think, and that rapidly spreads around the world. So the notion that we can wall ourselves off from the rest of the world doesn't make much sense, and it doesn't work very effectively. And so we find that we need to engage with people all around the world, and that this is increasing the complexity we have to deal with. And I can think of times when we banned certain pesticides from food, and then the pesticide companies continue to sell those pesticides to farmers in other countries. Well, we'll give it to them, and they can suffer the consequences, not us. And then what we found out was that, in fact, we were importing the fruits and vegetables from those very countries that we sold the pesticides to. So, in fact, that which we gave out was coming back upon us as we were eating the very pesticides that we thought we had sloughed off onto the rest of the world. So, climate change, we're dealing with increased complexity. Now, throughout evolutionary development, what's been found is that evolution is spurred on by increased complexity in the environment, and that's certainly what we are experiencing. In order to deal with that complexity, we have to diversify at higher levels. So we move from single cell to multi-cell to multi-organ. Then we move to communities. We move to society. So we have to diversify, take in new perspectives, new skill sets, new resources at higher levels of complexity. Once you have higher levels of complexity, that requires a higher level of integration. As we have more people, as we have more functions in our organization, we now have the problem of how do we integrate them? How do we take all these silos and have them work together? How do we integrate them so that they are working collaboratively and amplifying each other versus undermining each other? We know that cooperation, collaboration is what makes a system function. So we have to have this level of system awareness for higher levels of integration. And then that higher level of integration, for us to do that, we have to create new forms of cooperation, new structures for cooperation. We have to have integration teams, integration councils. We have to have cross-agency meetings, cross-agency task forces. We have to have new structures for cooperating, for integrating our actions. And when we do this, it prepares us to, in fact, encounter increased complexity. So this is a virtuous cycle of growth and development, but it requires us to be uncomfortable, to experience our discomfort, to take in that which is complex. We're reminded of an oyster that takes in grains of sand and other kinds of elements that make it uncomfortable, and it begins to secrete various substances, and what emerges from that can be a beautiful pearl because it takes that diversity, that which was an irritant, and makes it into something different, transforms it. All right, now let's go to the next slide. So I want to leave you with this. And the basic message is that you don't have to know your way through. You don't have to know the final, all of the steps, all of the route has to be laid out, the path has to be laid out. That is not required. If you are clear in your purpose, if you want to be a creator, and you're willing to be authentic and courageous, then I think this quote from Goethe will be helpful to you. It's called Be Intentional. Until one is committed, there is hesitancy, the chance to draw back, always ineffectiveness. Concerning all acts of initiative and creation, there is one elementary truth, the ignorance of which kills countless ideas and splendid plans. That the moment one definitely commits oneself, then providence moves too. All sorts of things occur to help one that would never otherwise have occurred. A whole stream of events issues from the decision, raising in one's favor all manner of unforeseen incidents, meetings, and material assistance, which no person could have dreamed would have come his or her way. Whatever you can do or dream, you can begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. Begin it now. So I want to leave you with that. I hope that you're encouraged. I hope that you can refer to this and that you can move forward and know with faith, being clear in your intention, being clear with your teams and what you intend to create, being grateful for all the resources that you have, but being attuned and being ever watchful. So as you take steps on the path of creating, that you're going to see new opportunities. You're going to see old resources in new ways for new purpose and repurpose them. You're going to have chance encounters. You're going to have opportunities for collaboration with other stakeholder groups. You're going to be enabled to move forward and move through this crisis. So thank you very much for participating, for viewing this presentation. I hope that you'll give thought to some of the questions I asked. I would love to hear your comments and get your feedback on ways that I can improve or ways that what resonated with you and what was helpful to you moving forward. Big thanks to you, Mel, for providing me this opportunity to redo this symposium. And hopefully we can make it available and others will
Jim,
glean and get something from it. Thank you again, Mel.
To re-record this for our membership. It's much appreciated. And for those listening, do reach out to Jim if you have comment or question. We thank you for listening to this. If you'd like to provide feedback on this recording, you can click that survey link that you're seeing now on the screen. And please do provide us some feedback. It would be much appreciated. We have 2 more webinars for the calendar year, one on November 24th from 12 to 1 Eastern, Discovering Your Own Immunity to Change, and another free webinar to close out the calendar year on December 15th, Creating a Culture of Respect and Civility. If you are not currently a member to TOC, registration is always open, and you're welcome to go to the trainingofficers.org website under Join TOC to learn more about membership. And if you've missed any of our webinars that we've done over the last 3 years, all of them are found in the program archive on the TOC website. So again, a big thank you to Jim for this and to Management Concepts for sponsoring this event. Thank you and have a wonderful rest of your day.